you are doing well. Wanted to start this video out just by taking a look at the smaller reservoirs that feed into the big ones that everybody's freaking out about right now to try to get an idea of what's happening up there. So this here is a map from way back in March of 2022, and what it's showing us is the snow water equivalent percent of normal. So in English, how much snow we had at this time versus how much compared to how much we've historically had on average. And all our mountainous regions, if you don't know Colorado, are in the western part of the state. So that little gray section over there makes sense. And we can see that every single region here is nearly 100% of average or above average. Gunnison, in fact, is 112% above average at this time of year, historically. So that all sounds really good until you remember that we are in a 20-year drought, and one average year doesn't do anything for the bigger picture. So what do I mean? Well, here is the drought map for Colorado. This is as of June 28th. You can see right down there at the bottom. Here's the whole U.S. Showed this last time. Here's Colorado. So this is actually better than it's been, but we can see that one average year does nothing to fix a drought. In fact, experts say that you need as many years of above average precipitation as you've had of drought conditions in order to fully recover from a drought. So if we're 20 years into a drought, we need 20 years of above average precipitation to recover. We had 1 year of average precipitation, so it didn't fix much. So last time I showed you this great data visualization of the different sizes and capacities of the different reservoirs along the Colorado River. There's a great website that allows us to see the live and historical data for these reservoirs that I think is really useful. So we'll start with Blue Mesa Reservoir in Colorado. There are some important things to note before we start looking at these graphs. First of all, the water level is given in feet MSL. Now that stands for mean sea level. Mean is just another word for average. So this reservoir is not over a mile deep. It's over a mile above sea level. And there are a number of reasons that we don't have to go into, but this is the way that they report the water levels on all of these reservoirs. So just something to keep in mind. Also something to keep in mind is that this website just changes this vertical axis based on what will fit the current data you're looking at. So like if I were to add in more years data, or if I were looking at a different lake, all these numbers are going to change. Now, Blue Mesa is a mountain reservoir, so the level on this is going to go up primarily based on snow melt. So when you see this level go up, it's an indication that snow in the Rocky Mountains is melting and it's flowing downhill into this reservoir. So you can kind of extract some interesting data from looking at this graph. If we look back at 2020, the colors on this graph are indicated down here at the bottom. But if we look at where kind of the peak gain in water level happens each year, we can get an idea for when the snow is melting each year. So in 2020, I'd say right around May 25th, and then it peaked out right around June 18th. So end of May was most of our melting. And then in 2021, it's a similar story. And you can see that both of these years had, you know, if the horizontal lines on this are 10 feet, had maybe one 10-foot gain in each of these years, but both years overall lost water after that. This year, look at this, starting all the way back in April, so that's about a month before the last 2 years that this water level started going up, and then it went up and up and up and up. So they had a lot of snow this year. And actually it was really just a couple of storms right at the end of the season that brought their snowpack up to that 100% level, and then they even got more snow after that that graph I showed you. So much so that we actually passed the level that this reservoir was at last year at this same time. Now, this is unfortunate. Since yesterday, we've had a drop in elevation at this lake, so it's very possible that we've already seen the peak water level at this reservoir for the year, and if the last 2 years are any indicator, it's going to keep dropping for the rest of the year until, looks like about end of October, beginning of November, and it'll start to slowly recover. Moving on to Navajo Reservoir, this one has not recovered to last year's levels. It's looking really low. It does look like, this is actually interesting, if we look back at 2020, peaked in June, the melting started right about the beginning of May. So from May through to the beginning of June was the melting season. And then in 2021, similar story, beginning of May, middle of June. This year, beginning of April, starts to go up. And it does better than those past 2 years, but we aren't able to recover to where we were, because all of these reservoirs keep letting more water out than is coming in naturally. So the water level drops. That's just how she goes. And our peak here in the middle of May usually would be about halfway through that snow melt, and we wouldn't have peaked yet. But that was our peak. We've been going down, had a little dip. Looks like they got some precipitation here. These numbers make it hard. But end of June, they had a little uptick, but already we can see since yesterday it has dropped a little teeny tiny bit. Continuing on, moving out of Colorado and up into Wyoming, this is the big one, the big tributary reservoir before we start talking about the actual two giants on the Colorado. But Flaming Gorge is really interesting because this one is used by the Bureau of Reclamation that manages a lot of the water on this river to kind of control the water level downstream at Lake Powell. So because Lake Powell kind of hit crisis mode this year, they intentionally released almost 500,000 acre-feet of water from this reservoir. And we can see exactly where they did that. We can start it right here. So May 25th, they opened up the gates to let a lot more water out. And this continued all the way through. And it looks like June 4th, they had, released the 500,000 acre-feet that they wanted to, which resulted in, it dropped from a high of almost 6,019 feet above sea level down to a low of about 6,015. So 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, that's almost 4 feet of drop at this reservoir to provide that water. And then they've even done a smaller release here that you can see. And this is normal. We can see in 2020 they had a big release that dropped it, 5 feet or so. And they had a bunch of smaller releases in 2021. But we can also see that the level of this reservoir is way below the level it was those past 2 years. So doing a big release like this, it's great. It helps Lake Powell. But if this lake doesn't recover, you can't keep doing it forever. There's only so many times you can drop the water from this reservoir before it's empty. And it's something to be considering. So I hope you liked this little summary on the 3 big tributary reservoirs up above Lake Powell. Next time we'll talk about Lake Powell specifically, probably Lake Mead as well. Those are the big ones. So if you liked this, hopefully you'll tune in for the next one. Thanks.